You think you know soul food Christmas? Think again. In the 1960s, Black families gathered around tables overflowing with dishes that carried history, love, and flavors most have never tasted. Let's dig into 2 hours of 60s Christmas soul foods you'll wish you knew sooner.
Transparent pie was the Depression dessert that proved elegance could emerge from the simplest pantry staples imaginable. A filling of sugar, eggs, butter, and a splash of vanilla or vinegar was poured into homemade crust and baked until set into glossy, translucent custard. The pie earned its name from the clear, amber appearance of the filling that looked almost like stained glass when sliced. The flavor was pure sweetness with subtle caramel notes from the brown butter, satisfying without any expensive additions. Transparent pie required no fruit, nuts, or fancy ingredients, just careful attention to avoid curdling the eggs. Mothers made these when the pantry held nothing but basics, yet Christmas still demanded dessert. The pie proved that skill and simplicity could create something genuinely beautiful. Homemade eggnog was the Christmas morning drink that adults sipped while children wondered what made it special. Eggs were beaten with sugar until thick and pale, then combined with whole milk, heavy cream, and generous splashes of bourbon. Nutmeg was grated fresh over each cup, its warm fragrance signaling Christmas had arrived. The drink required careful preparation since raw eggs needed proper handling, but families considered effort worthwhile for tradition. Homemade eggnog cost far less than store-bought and tasted incomparably richer, its custard texture coating the tongue with indulgence. Children received virgin portions without alcohol, though they suspected adult versions tasted better. Eggnog appeared only at Christmas, making it precious throughout the year. Red sauce cookies transformed a humble pantry staple into soft cake-like treats that appeared on African-American Christmas plates during lean times. The applesauce kept these cookies moist while reducing the butter needed, practical economy that didn't sacrifice flavor. Spiced with cinnamon and nutmeg, they carried the taste of autumn into winter celebrations. Families who canned their own applesauce took pride in using it for holiday baking, connecting Christmas to the harvest season's labor. The cookies were often studded with raisins or chopped nuts, adding texture to their tender crumb. Some recipes included a simple glaze drizzled over tops while still warm, seeping into the surface and adding sweetness. Children loved their soft texture and the way they seemed to melt on a tongue. These cookies represented the resourcefulness of making something special from ingredients already on hand, proving that Christmas didn't require expensive supplies. Butter cornmeal mush with molasses was breakfast, dinner, and sometimes supper, a dish so basic it barely qualified as cooking, yet sustained millions. Cornmeal was the foundation of the enslaved diet, distributed weekly by slaveholders who considered it adequate sustenance. Mixed with water and cooked until thick, the mush was bland and filling, its texture somewhere between porridge and paste. Molasses transformed it, adding sweetness and flavor that made mush worth eating rather than merely endurable. At Christmas, there might be extra molasses, enough to make mush taste almost like dessert. Children learned to stir slowly, preventing lumps while it thickened over fire. Adults ate, knowing this simple food was keeping them alive another day. The dish represented the minimum of nutrition, corn and sugar, calories without joy, yet enslaved families found ways to make even this humble fare feel worth gathering around together. Roasted
Ambrosia was once the quintessential African-American Christmas side dish, a simple combination of fresh oranges, shredded coconut, and sugar that appeared on nearly every holiday table across the South. Women sectioned oranges by hand, carefully removing every bit of membrane to leave only the sweetest flesh. Fresh coconut was cracked open and grated, a task often assigned to older children who took pride in contributing to Christmas preparations. The ingredients were layered in glass bowls and allowed to macerate overnight, the orange juice mingling with coconut to create something greater than its parts. Some families added pineapple or cherries, while purists insisted on nothing but oranges, coconut, and sugar. The dish provided bright, fresh contrast to heavy meats and rich desserts. Children especially loved ambrosia, its sweetness feeling like permission to eat dessert alongside dinner. Today's versions often rely on canned fruit and packaged coconut.
Cinnamon bread was the Christmas treat requiring foraging skills passed through generations of Black families who knew the land intimately. Wild persimmons ripened after first frost, their flesh transforming into honey-sweet pulp gathered freely from trees throughout the South. The pulp was mixed with flour, sugar, eggs, and spices, then baked into dense, moist loaves tasting of autumn concentrated. The flavor was unique, deeply sweet with notes of dates and honey impossible to replicate otherwise. Gathering persimmons was family activity, children climbing trees while adults caught fruit in sheets below. The bread kept well, making it ideal for Christmas gift-giving. Persimmon bread connected families to traditions of gathering wild foods that sustained ancestors. Cracker okra brought summer's garden bounty to winter Christmas tables, its crispy coating hiding tender pods within. Fresh or frozen okra was sliced into rounds, dredged in seasoned cornmeal, and fried until golden brown in cast iron skillets. The cornmeal created a crunchy shell that shattered with each bite, revealing the okra's subtle flavor inside. Some families added the fried okra to other dishes, while others served it as a standalone side that disappeared quickly. Okra grew abundantly in southern gardens and froze well, making it available and affordable throughout winter months. The dish connected Christmas tables to summer memories of gardens and harvests. Fried okra proved that simple vegetables could become irresistible when prepared with skill and care. Baked snowballs brought tropical sweetness to African American Christmas celebrations. Round cookies rolled in shredded coconut resembling snow many Southern families rarely sauce. The base was typically a butter cookie or condensed milk mixture, holding its shape when formed into balls. Fresh from the oven, warm cookies were rolled in coconut that stuck to surfaces, creating white-coated treats sparkling under Christmas lights. Coconut became accessible through canned products by mid-century, making these possible for families far from any coast. The texture contrast delighted children, crisp or chewy interior giving way to distinctive coconut flakes. Church Christmas programs featured trays of snowballs, visual appeal matching their sweetness. Some versions included maraschino cherries hidden in centers, a surprise making children bite carefully. The cookies stored well, coconut preserving moisture while adding flavor. For Southern families where real snow was rare, edible snowballs brought winter magic through creativity. Jam potato pone was a Christmas dessert requiring nothing more than sweet potatoes, molasses, and knowledge passed from mother to daughter across generations. Potatoes were roasted until soft, mashed with molasses, a little lard, and spices like ginger when available. The mixture was pressed into a pan and baked slowly until set into dense, sweet cake that could be sliced and eaten cold over several days. The texture fell somewhere between pudding and candy, smooth and sticky with concentrated sweetness, making children's eyes go wide. Sweet potatoes grew well in small plots. Enslaved families were sometimes permitted to tend, making them one of the few ingredients people could control. The pone represented agency, a dish made entirely from ingredients grown and prepared by enslaved hands without slaveholder involvement. Families made extra pones to share with neighbors, spreading Christmas joy through food when no other gifts were possible. Potlikker.
Lemon pudding was once a beloved Christmas dessert in African American communities. Made from wild persimmons gathered after the first frost transformed them from bitter to honey sweet. Families knew exactly when to harvest. Too early and the persimmons would pucker your mouth, but perfectly ripe ones melted into sweetness on the tongue. The fruit was pressed through strainers to remove seeds and skins, producing thick orange pulp that formed the pudding's base. Mixed with eggs, milk, sugar, and warm spices, then baked until set, persimmon pudding became dense, moist, and intensely flavored. Children helped with gathering, learning to identify ripe persimmons by their soft, wrinkled appearance. The knowledge of where trees grew was passed through generations, with families returning to the same spots yearly. This connection to land made persimmon pudding more than dessert. It represented self-reliance and natural abundance. Commercial unavailability has made this pudding rare on modern tables.
Crackling candy was the Christmas treat that turned pork skin scraps into sweet and salty confection unlike anything else. Cracklings left from rendering lard were stirred into boiling sugar syrup, creating candy studded with crispy pork bits. The combination of sweet and savory seemed strange but proved irresistible, each piece delivering sugar sweetness followed by porky crunch. Making crackling candy use scraps that might otherwise be discarded, transforming waste into celebration. The candy stored well in tins, its unusual flavor profile keeping people reaching for more pieces. Cracklings cost nothing, since they were byproducts of lard making that every household did during hog killing season. Crackling candy proved that ingenuity could turn any scrap into something worth sharing at Christmas. Oxtail stew simmered for hours on Christmas Eve, transforming the cheapest cut at the butcher into the richest dish on the holiday table. Oxtails were browned until deeply caramelized, then braised with tomatoes, onions, carrots, and potatoes until the meat fell from the bone. The marrow melted into the gravy, creating silky richness that no other cut could match. Mothers started the stew early in the day, letting it bubble gently while they prepared other dishes. The smell drew family members into the kitchen, sneaking tastes and asking when dinner would finally be ready. Oxtails cost almost nothing because most shoppers passed them by without recognizing their potential. The stew proved that patience and skill transformed humble ingredients into something truly magnificent. Pound cake was the syrup sugar cookies carried the distinctive flavor of Louisiana cane syrup into delicate Christmas treats that melted on the tongue. Unlike refined sugar cookies, these had a deeper, almost molasses-like sweetness that came from the syrup's natural complexity. The dough was rolled thin and cut into shapes, stars, bells, trees, then baked until edges just began to color. Some families iced them with simple glazes tinted with food coloring, while others left them plain to showcase the cane syrup's amber hue. In Gulf Coast communities where sugarcane grew abundantly, cane syrup was cheaper and more accessible than refined sugar, making these cookies practical as well as delicious. Children helped cut shapes using metal cutters passed down through generations, learning the patience required for delicate work. The cookies were packed in tins between wax paper layers, given as gifts to neighbors and teachers. Though cane syrup remains available today, these distinctive cookies have largely vanished from Christmas traditions. Coats with red-eye gravy was a Christmas morning dish, transforming humble corn into approaching comfort. Hominy was made by soaking dried corn in lye until hulls loosened, leaving swollen kernels that were dried and ground into grits. The grits cooked slowly until creamy, requiring constant stirring to prevent scorching. Red-eye gravy was made by deglazing the pan after frying ham with strong black coffee, creating thin, intensely flavored sauce. Poured over grits, the gravy added richness, elevating simple corn porridge into something memorable. Enslaved families might only have red-eye gravy at Christmas when coffee was available and meat drippings plentiful. The combination was filling and warming,
stretching limited ingredients into a meal that felt celebratory. Grits carried history. The nixtamalization process, creating hominy, came from indigenous peoples who taught it to both enslaved Africans and European settlers alike.
Brandied peaches were once a treasured Christmas delicacy in African American households, preserved in summer and saved for winter celebrations. Women selected the ripest peaches from summer harvests, peeled and sliced them, then layered them in jars with sugar and brandy for simultaneous preservation and flavor. By Christmas, the peaches had transformed into something almost candied, soft but firm, intensely flavored with both fruit and spirits. Families served brandied peaches alongside ham, where their sweetness cut through richness, or as dessert toppings over pound cake, adding elegant sophistication. The jars were precious gifts exchanged between neighbors as tokens of affection and skill. Making brandied peaches required planning ahead, connecting summer abundance to winter celebration in ways modern convenience has eliminated. Their absence from current Christmas tables severs a thread that once tied seasons and generations together beautifully. Wrapped water chestnuts delivered crispy, salty, and slightly sweet bites that children fought over despite not knowing exactly what water chestnuts were, the bacon exterior and crunchy interior creating mysterious but delicious combinations. Aunties would drain cans of whole water chestnuts, wrapping each one with half a strip of bacon and securing it with toothpicks before arranging them on baking sheets. Before baking, each bundle was brushed with a mixture of brown sugar and soy sauce that caramelized during cooking, creating a sweet salty glaze that coated the bacon. The water chestnuts roasted until the bacon was crispy and rendered, the fat dripping away while the sugar coating turned golden brown and slightly sticky. In Black households during the 1970s, bacon-wrapped water chestnuts represented sophistication borrowed from magazines, recipes that seemed fancy but remained simple for home cooks. Children loved them because bacon made everything better.
Crackling bread brought texture and tradition to Christmas tables, its bits of crispy pork skin studding each golden slice. Cracklings were the crispy remnants left after rendering lard from pork fat, saved specifically for adding to cornbread batter. The bread baked in cast iron skillets preheated with bacon grease, creating crusty bottoms that shattered when sliced. Each bite delivered the familiar comfort of cornbread, punctuated by salty, crunchy pork pieces that added richness. Cracklings cost nothing, since they were byproducts of lard making that thrifty cooks refused to discard. The bread appeared at Christmas because holiday cooking generated plenty of pork fat for rendering. Crackling bread connected families to tradition stretching back generations when nothing from the hog was ever wasted.
Pound cake cookies adapted the beloved pound cake into portable Christmas treats, carrying the same dense, buttery richness in cookie form. The dough followed pound cake proportions, equal parts butter, sugar, and flour, with eggs and vanilla creating the familiar flavor every African American household recognized. Unlike typical cookies, these had tight, almost cakey crumb, making them substantial and satisfying. They were often topped with simple glaze or left plain to let butter flavor shine. Church ladies brought them to gatherings, knowing they'd satisfy pound cake lovers wanting something they could eat without forks. The cookies required careful attention, pulled from ovens just as they colored to prevent drying. Children sometimes found them too dense, but adults appreciated how one or two satisfied while leaving room for other treats. These bridged the gap between cake and cookie, offering best qualities of both in a form that traveled well. Cakes with cane syrup was a Christmas breakfast children remembered for the rest of their lives, simple but touched with rare sweetness. Hoe cakes were cornmeal flatbreads cooked on griddles or flat hoe sides held over fire, a technique giving them their name and connecting them to field labor. The cakes came out crispy at edges and slightly dense in the middle, with subtle corn sweetness needing enhancement. Cane syrup was the answer, thick amber liquid pressed from sugarcane that some plantation owners distributed during Christmas. Drizzled over warm hoe cakes, syrup soaked into every crevice, creating bites of pure comfort. Children licked fingers clean, trying to capture every drop before it disappeared. Mothers made hoe cakes because ingredients were reliable, cornmeal was the staple ration, and the technique required no special equipment. The syrup transformed every day into celebration, proving small luxuries could carry enormous emotional weight for people whose lives contained so few indulgences.
Japanese fruitcake carried no connection to Japan, but became a beloved African-American Christmas tradition across the Deep South for generations. This spiced layer cake alternated between plain white layers and darkly spiced layers filled with raisins, coconut, and sometimes dates. The contrast between delicate vanilla layers and heavily spiced fruit layers created complexity that delighted both children and adults. Fresh coconut, grated by hand from whole coconuts purchased for Christmas, mixed with citrus and sugar into a sticky, fragrant filling. Families made Japanese fruitcake only at Christmas, treating it as a special occasion dessert. Grandmothers began preparations days in advance while children watched and learned techniques they would someday pass to their own families. The mysterious name added to its allure, making it feel exotic even in humble kitchens. Its disappearance represents not just lost recipes, but lost rituals of Christmas preparation that once brought families together around the kitchen table. Charlotte
Appeared at Christmas, when backyard trees provided free nuts that transformed into golden, crunchy candy with nothing but sugar and patience. Pecans were stirred into caramelized sugar syrup, then spread thin onto greased surfaces, where the mixture hardened into shatteringly crisp sheets. Each piece delivered butter-rich sweetness, studded with toasted pecans that crackled between teeth. Making brittle required careful timing, since the sugar could burn in moments. But practiced cooks knew exactly when to pour. The candy stored for weeks in tins, making it ideal for gift-giving to neighbors and family. Pecans cost nothing when gathered from yard trees that produced abundantly each fall. Pecan brittle proved that nature's bounty, transformed by skill, created gifts worthy of any Christmas. Tea cakes were the simple, not too sweet cookies that African-American grandmothers baked for Christmas visits and holiday gift-giving. The dough contained only flour, butter, sugar, eggs, and vanilla, mixed until smooth, then rolled and cut into rounds. The cookies baked until barely golden, their pale color belying the buttery richness within each tender bite. Tea cakes were meant to accompany coffee or tea, their subtle sweetness perfect alongside hot drinks on cold Christmas mornings. Grandmothers often made them by feel rather than measurement, their hands knowing exactly how the dough should look and behave. The cookies stored well in tins, making them ideal for preparing days before company arrived. Tea cakes carried memories of elders and traditions passed down through generations of holiday baking. Pecan potato drop cookies transformed the South's most abundant root vegetable into Christmas treats that surprised guests with their moist, cake-like texture. Mashed sweet potatoes were folded into cookie dough along with butter, sugar, eggs, and warm spices, creating batter spooned onto sheets rather than rolled. The result was soft, pillowy cookies with natural sweetness needing little added sugar. African-American families valued this practicality. Sweet potatoes grew abundantly and stored well through winter, making them perfect for holiday baking when ingredients were scarce. The cookies carry hints of cinnamon and nutmeg, sometimes finished with simple glaze. Church ladies brought them to potlucks, where they disappeared faster than elaborate offerings. Children loved their softness and the way they melted rather than crumbled. The orange-tinged dough connected Christmas baking to the harvest, reminding families of gardens that provided throughout the year.
Pied catfish appeared on Christmas tables near plantations with rivers, streams, or ponds where enslaved people were sometimes permitted to fish during their limited free time. Catfish lurked in muddy bottoms, feeding on whatever the water provided, and they could be caught with simple lines and hooks made from bent pins or scavenged metal. The fish were cleaned, rolled in cornmeal, seasoned with salt and whatever pepper was available, then fried in hot lard until the coating turned golden and crispy. The flesh inside stayed white and flaky, with a mild sweetness that made catfish a prize catch. Fishing required patience and knowledge, understanding where fish gathered, what time they fed, how to read water and weather. At Christmas, a successful fishing trip meant protein that hadn't come from slaveholder rations, food that represented freedom in small measure. Families gathered to share the fish, dividing portions carefully so everyone received a taste of something special earned through their own skill.
Roos was once an elegant Christmas dessert in African American households, featuring ladyfinger cookies lining a mold filled with Bavarian cream and topped with whipped cream. Ladyfingers had to be arranged precisely, the cream had to set perfectly, and unmolding had to happen without disaster. Families who mastered this dessert served it with pride at Christmas dinners, where its sophisticated appearance impressed guests and demonstrated culinary skill. The Bavarian cream filling was silky and light, flavored with vanilla and sometimes a splash of rum for Christmas warmth. Children watched from doorways as mothers performed what seemed like magic, transforming simple ingredients into something that looked like fancy restaurant fare. The dessert represented aspiration, a way of making Christmas feel special, even when resources were limited. Commercial bakeries eventually made fancy desserts accessible, and the art of homemade Charlotte Russe gradually faded from family kitchens and Christmas memory alike.
Milk pralines were the southern candy that used tangy buttermilk to create something resembling expensive New Orleans confections at a fraction of the cost. Sugar and buttermilk were boiled together until reaching softball stage, then beaten with butter and vanilla until the mixture turned creamy and thick. Spoonfuls were dropped onto wax paper where they spread into patties with slightly grainy texture and deep caramel flavor. The buttermilk added tanginess that balanced the sweetness and helped the candy set properly. Pecans were added when available, though plain pralines satisfied perfectly well during lean times. Buttermilk was cheap since it was often the byproduct of butter making that families did at home. The pralines proved fancy candy was possible without fancy ingredients or expensive nuts. Pig's feet appeared on Christmas tables as a beloved delicacy that divided families into those who craved them and those who could not understand the appeal. The feet were simmered until tender, then preserved in spiced vinegar brine that infused every bite with tangy, porky flavor. They were served cold, straight from the jar, as appetizers or late-night snacks when the main meal had ended. The gelatinous texture was part of the appeal, the meat falling from tiny bones that required patient nibbling. Pickled pig's feet cost almost nothing, since butchers sold them cheaply to those who knew their value. The dish connected families to traditions stretching back generations when every part of the hog was used. Those who loved them requested them every Christmas without fail.
Coconut cookies carried the distinctive texture of stone-ground cornmeal into delicate Christmas treats that crunched and crumbled with every bite. The dough combined cornmeal with flour, butter, sugar, and eggs, creating cookies with a sandy texture unlike anything made with flour alone. Baked until edges turned golden, they emerged slightly grainy and wonderfully crisp, perfect for dunking in coffee or milk. Southern Black families valued cornmeal for its versatility and affordability, using it in everything from bread to desserts. These cookies appeared at Christmas as proof that humble ingredients could create something worth celebrating. Some recipes added citrus zest or spices to complement the corn flavor, while others kept them simple. The cookies stored well in tins, maintaining their crunch for weeks when kept dry. Children grew up eating them without realizing they were born from necessity rather than choice. Cornmeal cookies represented the creativity that turned pantry staples into holiday memories. Date with cornbread was perhaps the most humble Christmas meal, yet it nourished bodies and spirits when nothing else was available. Potlikker was cooking water left after boiling greens, collards, turnips, or whatever could be gathered from winter gardens. This broth contained vitamins and minerals leached during cooking, making it genuinely nutritious despite appearing to be mere vegetable water. Enslaved families sipped warm liquor from cups, using cornbread to soak up every drop. The flavor was earthy and green, slightly bitter, but satisfying on cold December nights when cabin walls let in the wind. On Christmas, potlikker might be richer, made from greens cooked with a bit of fatback if rations allowed. Mothers ensured every child received their share, knowing the liquor would ward off winter sickness. This dish taught an essential lesson that nothing should be wasted, that nourishment existed even in what appeared to be scraps.
Oyster dressing was once a luxurious addition to African-American Christmas tables, particularly in coastal communities where oysters were plentiful and affordable. Fresh oysters were shucked and folded into cornbread dressing along with celery, onions, and sage, their briny liquor adding moisture and depth. The combination of earthy cornbread and oceanic oysters created dressing unlike any other, sophisticated yet deeply Southern. Families near water often harvested their own oysters, making the dish both special and economical. The oysters plumped during baking, releasing juices into surrounding bread and creating pockets of intense flavor. Christmas dinner felt incomplete without this treasured dressing passed through generations. Inland families sometimes splurged on canned oysters, understanding Christmas deserved such extravagance. As oyster prices rose and coastal access diminished, oyster dressing became increasingly rare, its distinctive taste now largely a memory for those who remember.
Bread dressing was the soul of Christmas dinner, its savory richness anchoring the entire holiday meal in African-American homes. Mothers crumbled day-old cornbread into enormous bowls, mixing it with sautéed celery, onions, and sage that perfumed kitchens. Chicken broth moistened the mixture while beaten eggs bound everything together into perfect texture. Some families added giblets or crumbled sausage, depending on regional traditions and budget. The dressing baked until golden on top and custardy inside, its edges crisping into coveted portions. Unlike bread stuffing, cornbread dressing carried distinctly Southern heritage that Black families treasured. It stretched to feed crowds, since cornmeal cost pennies, and transformed into enough for the entire extended family.
Sugar icebox cookies were the make-ahead miracle of African-American Christmas baking, dough prepared days in advance and sliced fresh whenever guests arrived. The brown sugar gave these cookies deep, molasses-tinged sweetness and chewy texture, distinguishing them from ordinary sugar cookies. Mothers shaped dough into logs, wrapped them in wax paper, and stored them in the icebox until ready to bake. This allowed busy households to have fresh-baked cookies without mixing chaos during hectic holidays. The cookies emerged with crisp edges and soft centers, surfaces crackled from caramelizing brown sugar. Some families added chopped pecans, while others kept them simple. The technique was practical genius born from necessity, allowing women who worked outside the home to still provide homemade Christmas cookies. Children loved watching the log being sliced, knowing warm cookies would follow within minutes. These cookies represented planning and determination to maintain traditions despite demanding circumstances. Coconut persimmon pudding was a Christmas dessert made from fruit growing wild and free belonging to no one and therefore available to everyone who knew where to look. Persimmons ripened after first frost, their orange flesh turning from mouth-puckeringly astringent to honey-sweet overnight. Enslaved foragers gathered them by the basketful, mashing soft pulp and straining out seeds to create thick puree, mixed with cornmeal, molasses, and sometimes milk when available. The batter baked into pudding, tasting like autumn concentrated into every spoonful. The flavor was complex, sweet and earthy with hints of cinnamon and dates, unlike anything else in the limited cuisine available. Persimmon pudding represented knowledge of the land that enslaved communities developed, understanding which wild foods were safe and when to harvest them. This was wisdom passed from African ancestors who had forged their own lands, adapted to American forests, and carried forward as resistance against total control. Ash cakes
Were once an essential part of African American Christmas tradition. Those carefully cleaned and slow-cooked pig intestines that filled homes with their distinctive aroma for days. The preparation began well before Christmas, with women spending hours cleaning the chitlins repeatedly until pristine. They were simmered for hours with onions, vinegar, and red pepper flakes until tender enough to cut with a fork. The smell was powerful and polarizing, loved by those who grew up with it, but it meant Christmas as surely as any carol. Chitlins connected families to ancestors who transformed discarded parts into nourishing food. They were served with hot sauce and eaten with cornbread to soak up the flavorful potlikker. The dish carried deep cultural significance, representing survival, resourcefulness, and creating abundance from scarcity. Younger generations have largely abandoned the tradition, letting this meaningful Christmas food fade into memory. Red velvet
Depression tea cakes were the simple cookies that Black grandmothers baked when fancy ingredients were impossible. But Christmas still demanded something sweet. Flour, sugar, butter or lard, eggs, and vanilla, combined into soft dough that was rolled and cut into rounds before baking until barely golden. The cookies were tender rather than crisp, their subtle sweetness perfect alongside coffee or tea on Christmas morning. Tea cakes required no frosting or decoration, their plain beauty reflecting the humble circumstances that created them. Children learned to bake by helping with these cookies, their simplicity making them ideal for small hands. The cookies stored well in tins and improved with age as flavors melded. Depression tea cakes proved that the sweetest memories came from the simplest treats shared with love. Pudding with sauce transformed stale bread into Christmas dessert that tasted like intentional luxury rather than thrifty rescue. Day-old bread was torn into pieces and soaked in custard made from eggs, milk, sugar, and vanilla until completely saturated. Raisins, cinnamon, and nutmeg were folded in before the mixture baked into golden, custardy squares. The sauce made everything special, whether bourbon-spiked butter sauce or simple vanilla cream poured warm over each serving. Bread pudding appeared at Christmas because holiday baking left plenty of bread scraps needing purpose before they went stale. The dessert fed crowds cheaply, a single loaf of bread stretching into enough pudding for a dozen servings. Nothing embodied thrifty elegance better than bread pudding dressed in holiday sauce. Fried
raisin gems were the hearty, homespun cookies that anchored African American Christmas cookie plates with wholesome goodness. Rolled oats gave these cookies a chewy, textured bite, while plump raisins provided bursts of natural sweetness. The dough was spiced with cinnamon and nutmeg, creating warm fragrance that filled kitchens during holiday baking. Families valued these because oats were affordable and filling, stretching budgets while still delivering something worth celebrating. The cookies were substantial enough to serve as breakfast for children racing to open presents on Christmas morning. Some recipes added chopped pecans for crunch, while others kept focus on the classic oat raisin combination. Church ladies packed them into tins, knowing they would satisfy those seeking something less sweet than frosted offerings. These gems have faded from many holiday spreads, but they once represented the practical wisdom of making nourishing treats that still tasted indulgent. Praline cookie raccoon was a Christmas dish for families skilled enough to trap the clever animals raiding corn cribs after dark. Raccoons were fatty and flavorful, their meat rich from autumn foraging on nuts and berries. The animal was skinned, cleaned, and often parboiled before being roasted slowly with sweet potatoes. The meat turned dark and tender, with distinctive taste falling somewhere between pork and dark poultry. Trapping raccoons required knowledge passed between generations, where they traveled what bait they preferred. At Christmas, a successfully caught raccoon meant protein slaveholders hadn't provided, food earned through skill during precious free hours. Families shared the meat with neighbors, spreading bounty across cabins. The dish represented self-sufficiency and small victories enslaved people won against a system designed to control every aspect of existence, turning cunning and patience into feast.
Holiday fruit cocktail cake was the thrifty dessert that surprised everyone by tasting far better than its modest ingredients suggested. Mothers mixed boxed cake batter with a can of fruit cocktail, juice and all, creating a batter that baked into a moist, tender cake dotted with cherries and soft fruit pieces. As it cooked, the top formed a sugary crust that crackled slightly when cut. Children loved the bright pops of color inside each slice and the sweetness that came from fruit baked in syrup. This cake was inexpensive, reliable, and perfect for feeding a crowd on Christmas Day. It often appeared alongside pies, puddings, and cobblers, holding its own with simple charm. Mothers appreciated that it used pantry ingredients and required very little work during an already busy holiday. Even years later, adults remembered the warm slices and the unexpected delight of fruit in every bite. Holiday fruit cocktail cake tasted like thrift turned into celebration.
Ribbon cane cookies were the Christmas treat that showcased the pure sweetness of freshly pressed cane syrup in simple, satisfying form. Ribbon cane syrup, darker and more complex than refined sugar, was creamed with butter and mixed into dough with flour and spices. The cookies baked into chewy rounds with crispy edges, their deep caramel flavor impossible to achieve with ordinary sweeteners. Families who grew their own cane or bought syrup from neighbors could make dozens of cookies for almost nothing. The flavor spoke of southern soil and autumn harvest, connecting Christmas celebrations to the agricultural calendar. Children loved these cookies for their intense sweetness, while adults appreciated their complexity. Ribbon cane cookies proved that regional ingredients created regional treasures worth preserving. 1.0. Pecan brittle neck bones and rice stretch Christmas protein further than any other dish, feeding large families on the cheapest cuts available at butcher shops. Pork neck bones were browned until deeply caramelized, then braised slowly with onions, garlic, and bay leaves until meat fell from bone. The rich gravy formed during cooking was spooned generously over mounds of fluffy white rice, each grain soaking up smoky, savory goodness. Mothers made this when budgets stretched thin, but tables still needed to look full and festive for visiting relatives. Neck bones cost almost nothing at counters, where prosperous customers ignored them. The dish proved skilled cooks could transform overlooked ingredients into something everyone requested year after year. Hop-on sandies were the buttery treasures of African-American Christmas cookie tins, crumbly, shortbread-style cookies studded with chopped pecans from backyard trees. The dough was simple: butter, sugar, flour, and vanilla, but technique required patience, creaming butter until light
and folding in pecans without crushing them. Baked until just golden, the cookies shattered at first bite, releasing buttery richness and toasted pecan flavor. Southern Black families often gathered pecans themselves, children shaking branches while elders collected fallen nuts. This made cookies nearly free to produce, transforming backyard harvest into something elegant enough for company. The sandies stored well in tins between wax paper layers, improving as flavors melded. Grandmothers guarded their specific ratios, knowing too much flour made them tough. These weren't everyday cookies, but reserved for Christmas when their richness felt appropriate. Commercial versions cannot match homemade sandies carrying the taste of specific trees and hands. Brown greens with vinegar was a Christmas side dish made from whatever edible plants could be foraged from winter fields and forest edges. Poke salad, lamb's quarters, dandelion greens, and other wild plants supplemented the cultivated collards and turnips from gardens. The greens were gathered by those who knew which plants were safe and which were poisonous. Knowledge passed carefully between generations. Cooked down with a splash of vinegar and whatever fat was available, the greens provided essential nutrients missing from the corn-heavy enslaved diet. At Christmas, wild greens might accompany the main dishes as a reminder that the land itself could provide sustenance to those who understood its offerings. Foraging represented freedom of a sort, the ability to find food beyond what slaveholders rationed. Each plate of greens contained wisdom about the natural world that no one could take away, knowledge that meant survival for those who possessed it. Corn
preserves cake was once a Christmas tradition in African American homes where backyard fig trees provided summer abundance transformed into winter celebration. Women preserved figs in heavy syrup during summer, storing jars until Christmas baking began. The cake was a spiced creation, dense and moist, with fig preserves folded directly into batter and sometimes layered between cake rounds. The figs added sweetness and texture, their tiny seeds providing subtle crunch amid the soft crumb. Families with fig trees took pride in their preserves, each household developing different techniques. Christmas without fig preserves cake was unthinkable in homes where tradition had taken root. The cake connected summer gardens to December celebrations, reminding families that abundance could be captured. Children grew up watching the cycle, from harvest to preserve making to baking. As backyard gardens became less common and store-bought products failed to match homemade quality, this cake faded from tables. Black
molasses pull candy was the Christmas tradition that turned an evening into celebration, requiring nothing but molasses, sugar, and willing hands. The mixture was boiled to hard crack stage, then poured onto greased platters to cool just enough for handling. Children and adults would butter their hands and begin pulling, stretching the dark candy until it lightened and developed silky texture. Partners faced each other, stretching the rope between them until arms ached from the effort. As the candy cooled, it was twisted into ropes and snapped into pieces that lasted weeks in tins. Molasses was the cheapest sweetener during the Depression, making this candy possible for almost any family. Pool candy transformed poverty into celebration, proving Christmas joy came from togetherness rather than store-bought luxuries. Sorghums carried deep tradition to African American Christmas tables, their preparation a ritual connecting generations through labor and love. Pig intestines required hours of careful cleaning, soaked and scrubbed repeatedly until meeting the exacting standards of grandmothers who accepted nothing less. The clean chitlins were simmered slowly with onions, vinegar, and red pepper flakes until tender, filling homes with distinctive aroma. Families debated proper preparation, some preferring them boiled soft, while others fried them crispy in cast iron. The dish cost pennies since butchers sold intestines cheaply to those who knew their value. Chitlins appeared at Christmas because holidays provided time for hours of preparation, transforming scraps into delicacy that honored ancestors.
Blackstrap molasses snaps were the bold, assertive cookies of African American Christmas baking, thin and crisp with almost bitter depth that adult palates appreciated. Unlike milder tea cakes, these used blackstrap molasses, the darkest, most mineral-rich variety, giving intense flavor that wasn't for everyone. The dough spread thin during baking, creating cookies that cracked and crisped into satisfying snaps. Heavy doses of ginger, cloves, and cinnamon balanced the molasses' bitterness with warmth. These weren't children's cookies, but treats appearing alongside coffee for adults gathering after Christmas dinner. The blackstrap provided iron and minerals, making these surprisingly nutritious. Families understood some flavors were acquired, passed from generation to generation as palates matured. The cookies kept exceptionally well, crispness lasting weeks when stored properly. For those who loved them, blackstrap snaps represented sophistication within tradition, cookies demanding attention and rewarding appreciation. Butterworld dumplings was a Christmas dish requiring hunting skill and patience, turning the small game that inhabited every southern woodland into hearty winter fare. Squirrels were plentiful and required less effort to catch than larger game, making them an accessible protein source for enslaved people with limited hunting time. The animals were cleaned, cut into pieces, and simmered with wild onions until the meat was tender and the broth rich. Dumplings made from cornmeal and water were dropped into the bubbling pot, where they puffed and absorbed the savory liquid. The result was filling and warming, a complete meal in a single pot. Fathers taught sons where to find squirrels and how to approach them quietly. The dish represented the skills enslaved communities developed to supplement meager rations, knowledge of the woods, understanding of animal behavior, and the patience to wait for the right moment. Each bowl contained earned protein and passed down wisdom. Fried corn.
The fresh vibrancy that made this dish shine. Coconut layer cake was once the towering centerpiece of African American Christmas desserts, its snowy white frosting and generous coconut coating making it look like winter itself had settled onto the cake stand. The layers were made tender with butter and eggs, flavored with vanilla and sometimes almond extract. The real work came with the coconut. Fresh nuts were cracked, meat pried from shells and grated by hand until enough accumulated to cover the entire cake. The frosting was typically a boiled white icing, glossy and sweet, applied while warm so coconut would stick. Building the cake was a multi-day process, with layers baked one day and assembled the next. Families displayed finished cakes prominently, the white towers announcing that Christmas had arrived. Fresh coconut gave sweetness and texture that dried flakes could never match. Children begged for corner pieces where extra coconut accumulated. As fresh coconuts became harder to find, this magnificent cake slowly faded from holiday tables. Chitlin.
Dried apple stack cake was the Christmas dessert proving community cooperation could create something magnificent from humble ingredients. Thin spiced cake layers were stacked high with dried apple filling between each. The assembly left to rest while moisture from apples softened the cake. Each family might contribute one layer, with the hostess providing apple filling from autumn's preserved harvest. The cake improved with time, flavors melding until layers became almost indistinguishable from filling. Dried apples were affordable since families preserved their own, and cake layers required only basic pantry staples. The finished stack reached 8 or 10 layers tall, impressive enough for any Christmas table. Stack cake proved collective effort created celebration no single family could achieve alone. Peach cobbler bubbled golden and fragrant from ovens across Black households on Christmas Day. its fruit filling representing summer, preserved for winter. Canned peaches were layered with sugar, cinnamon, and butter, then topped with biscuit dough that rose into tender crust during baking. The cobbler emerged with caramelized edges where fruit juices had thickened and dough had crisped into buttery perfection. Mothers served it warm, with cold cream poured over top or vanilla ice cream melting into golden pools. Canned peaches made dessert affordable year-round, their sweetness concentrated into something almost better than fresh. The cobbler assembled quickly between cooking tasks, baking while family gathered. Peach cobbler proved simple desserts made Christmas complete.
Butter kiss cookies were the playful favorites of African American Christmas cookie plates. Simple peanut butter rounds topped with chocolate candies pressed into their centers while still warm. The dough was mixed quickly. Peanut butter, sugar, egg, and sometimes flour, then rolled into balls and baked until just set. The moment they emerged from the oven, unwrapped chocolate kisses were pressed firmly into each center, the heat softening the candy just enough to anchor it. Children eagerly volunteered for the pressing task, their small fingers working quickly before cookies cooled. The combination of salty peanut butter and sweet chocolate satisfied every craving, while the candy nestled in each cookie made plates look festive. Peanut butter was affordable protein that stretched across many uses, and chocolate kisses were a Christmas splurge that felt luxurious. These cookies represented the joy of simple pleasures and the excitement children felt participating in holiday traditions. Cane was a Christmas dish connecting enslaved people directly to West African foodways where okra had been cultivated and cooked for centuries before the Middle Passage. The vegetable grew well in southern heat and was dried for winter use, the pods strung on thread and hung from cabin rafters. Reconstituted in water, the okra released its characteristic thick, silky texture that gave body to soups and stews. Combined with whatever meat or fish was available, onions and pepper, the soup became warming sustenance on cold December nights. The distinctive texture, slippery and substantial, was beloved by those who grew up with it and sometimes strange to others. At Christmas, okra soup might be richer than usual, made with more meat or served in larger portions. The dish represented cultural continuity, proof that African cooking traditions survived despite slavery's attempts to erase identity. Each bowl was an act of remembrance and resistance. Baked sweet potato
Cake with cream cheese frosting was the Christmas showstopper, the dessert that made children gasp when it landed on the table because no other cake looked quite like it. The cake's deep red crumb contrasted beautifully with the thick, tangy white frosting spread across every layer with deliberate care. Mothers made it slowly and proudly, knowing it signaled a special occasion and that every slice would bring wide smiles. The flavor was rich, smooth, and softly cocoa-kissed, the kind of taste that stayed with you long after the plate was empty. It was usually saved for the very end of the day, when everyone settled down for one last bite of sweetness. Red velvet cake tasted like joy, pride, and a Southern Christmas done right, a dessert that felt like celebration in every layer.
Oyster pudding turned stale soda crackers into Christmas dessert, tasting far more expensive than its humble origins. Crushed crackers were layered with custard made from eggs, milk, sugar, and vanilla, then baked until the top browned and interior set creamy. The crackers softened into custard, creating texture similar to bread pudding with subtle saltiness balancing sweetness. Raisins or coconut were added when available, though the basic version satisfied perfectly well. Cracker pudding cost almost nothing since stale crackers were scraps destined for waste anyway. The dish demonstrated how depression cooks refused to discard anything edible, transforming garbage into celebration food. Cracker gravy turned the parts most people discarded into the most sought-after sauce on the Christmas table. The neck, heart, liver, and gizzard from the turkey were simmered until tender, then chopped fine and folded into pan drippings thickened with flour. The gravy emerged dark, rich, and deeply savory, carrying flavors that store-bought versions could never match. Mothers made it while the turkey rested, working quickly to have everything ready when carving began. Children who claimed to hate organ meats devoured giblet gravy without knowing what made it special, asking for seconds over their rice and dressing. The gravy cost nothing extra since giblets came free inside every bird purchased. Making giblet gravy honored traditions of using everything and wasting nothing. Dirty rice
Fig cookies celebrated the fig trees that grew in backyards across southern Black communities, turning preserved fruit into Christmas treasures. Dried figs were chopped fine and folded into spiced dough, fragrant with cinnamon, nutmeg, and cloves, creating cookies dense with fruit and flavor. Families who had fig trees often dried excess fruit in late summer, storing it for Christmas baking when its concentrated sweetness could shine. The cookies were chewy rather than crisp, their dark surfaces studded with visible fig pieces, providing bursts of honeyed sweetness. Some recipes called for fig preserves, stirred directly into batter, creating even moister cookies that improved with age. These weren't fancy cookies, but reflected practical wisdom of using what grew abundantly. Church Christmas bazaars often featured these cookies, made by women whose fig trees had provided for generations. The tradition faded as backyard fruit trees became less common and commercial sweets more accessible. Peanut stew was a dish with direct African roots, brought across the Atlantic in memories of enslaved people who recreated homeland cooking with American ingredients. Peanuts, called ground nuts or goobers, grew easily in southern soil and were sometimes permitted in small garden plots. The nuts were roasted, shelled, and ground into paste, forming the base of thick, satisfying stew. Root vegetables, greens, and whatever meat scraps were available joined the pot, simmering until everything melded into rich, nutty warmth. The flavor was unlike anything in European cooking, earthy and complex with creamy texture coating the tongue. At Christmas, peanut stew might include extra ingredients or be prepared with special care. The dish represented cultural survival, proof that enslaved people maintained connections to African foodways despite every attempt to erase their heritage. Each bowl contained not just nourishment, but memory and quiet resistance.
Christmas dessert in African American homes, featuring caramelized sugar that gave both cake and frosting a deep amber color and complex flavor. The process began with carefully burning sugar in a heavy pan until it turned dark brown, then adding water to create syrup incorporated into batter. This caramelization produced flavors plain sugar could never achieve. Notes of toffee, molasses, and subtle bitterness balancing sweetness. The cake layers were tender and moist, their golden brown color announcing the special ingredient before the first bite. The burnt sugar icing created frosting both sweet and sophisticated. Families passed down techniques for perfect caramelization. Too light and flavor was weak, too dark and bitterness dominated. Christmas provided occasion for such careful work. Children watched mothers transform ordinary sugar into liquid gold, learning that patience could elevate simple ingredients. The decline of from-scratch baking has made burnt sugar cake rare.
Coconut drops were the Christmas candy that brought tropical flavor to Depression-era tables when a single coconut could stretch into dozens of treats. Shredded coconut was stirred into boiled sugar syrup, then dropped by spoonfuls onto wax paper, where the mounds cooled into chewy, sweet confections. The coconut added texture and flavor that made each drop feel more substantial than its simple ingredients suggested. Some cooks toasted the coconut first for deeper flavor, while others left it raw for brighter sweetness. A single coconut cost little and yielded enough shreds for multiple batches of candy. The drops stored well in tins, their chewy texture actually improving after a day or two. Coconut drops proved that a little creativity could transport families far from depression hardships. 1.0.
Skillet. Fried catfish with cornmeal crust was the pride of riverbank communities and churchyard gatherings. Fishermen returned at dawn with fresh-caught catfish while cooks prepared heavy iron skillets filled with hot lard or peanut oil. Fillets were dredged in seasoned cornmeal until every piece was coated in a golden layer ready for the crackling pan. The sizzle of fish hitting the oil was music to children waiting for the first crisp bite. Friday fish fries became weekly celebrations where neighbors brought sides of slaw and hush puppies, and stories flowed as freely as sweet tea. The flavor of smoky river water lingered in each flaky bite, reminding everyone of the connection between food and place. Modern diners may order catfish in restaurants, but the ritual of catching, cleaning, and frying by the water's edge has faded, leaving only memories of warm evenings when the entire town smelled of cornmeal and spice and laughter carried across the banks. Pig-eared
milk cookies were the everyday favorites elevated to Christmas status through careful decoration and presentation in African American homes. The dough was basic: flour, sugar, butter, eggs, and sweet milk, but the results were tender cookies with a delicate crumb that took icing beautifully. Families saved these for Christmas when there was time to frost them with colored icings and sprinkle them with decorations. Children helped press colored sugar onto still wet icing, their small hands learning the patience required for decorating. The cookies were displayed on special plates, their bright colors signaling celebration and care. Sweet milk was the term for regular whole milk, distinguishing it from buttermilk in households where both were used daily. These cookies proved that simple recipes could become special through effort and intention. The tradition of decorating sweet milk cookies brought families together around kitchen tables, creating memories as lasting as the recipes themselves. Chocolate cakes were the most primitive bread available to enslaved families, made by wrapping cornmeal dough in cabbage leaves and burying it directly in hot fireplace ashes. The technique required no pan, just cornmeal mixed with water and salt, shaped into rounds, wrapped in leaves, and nestled into coals. After 20 minutes, cakes emerged with smoky, slightly charred exterior and dense, steaming interior that tasted like survival itself. At Christmas, ash cakes might be made larger or given extra care, but the method remained unchanged. Children learned to make them young. Understanding this skill might mean the difference between eating and hunger. The cabbage leaves imparted faint green flavor and kept ash from penetrating the dough. Ash cakes represented the absolute baseline of cookery, what could be made when nothing else was available, yet they filled bellies and sustained lives through bondage's cruelest seasons.
Divinity candy was once a Christmas staple in African American homes, those pure white clouds of sweetness that appeared on holiday tables like edible decorations. The candy was made by beating hot sugar syrup into stiffly whipped egg whites until the mixture became fluffy, glossy, and light enough to hold its shape. The process was notoriously finicky. Humidity could ruin an entire batch, and timing had to be perfect. Families learned to make divinity only on dry winter days, treating it as a seasonal specialty. The candy was often studded with pecans, adding crunch and richness to the pillowy sweetness. Children gathered around to watch the transformation from liquid syrup to fluffy candy, marveling at kitchen alchemy. Mothers dropped perfect mounds onto waxed paper, working quickly before the mixture set. The finished candy was displayed prominently, lasting through New Year as a reminder that Christmas had visited. Its disappearance from modern kitchens reflects changing tastes and lost patience for temperamental recipes.
Popcorn balls appeared on Christmas tables throughout Black households where both ingredients grew abundantly and cost almost nothing. Popcorn was popped over wood fires, then drizzled with hot sorghum syrup, boiled to the perfect sticky stage. Buttered hands shaped the mixture into balls while still warm, pressing firmly so kernels held together. The syrup added deep, earthy sweetness that refined sugar could never match, complementing the toasted corn perfectly. Children received these as Christmas gifts, wrapped in waxed paper or tucked into small bags. Sorghum popcorn balls represented the ingenuity of families who grew their own sweetener and corn. The treats lasted for days, carried in pockets and nibbled slowly to make Christmas stretch as far as possible. Ham-hock collard greens simmered on stovetops throughout Black neighborhoods during Christmas week, their smoky fragrance drifting through windows. Tough collard leaves were stripped from stems, washed repeatedly, then piled into enormous pots with smoked ham hocks for flavor. The greens cooked low and slow for hours, their bitterness mellowing into silky tenderness while absorbing salty, smoky essence. Mothers added vinegar, hot sauce, or sugar depending on family tradition, each household guarding specific seasoning secrets. The pot liquor left behind was liquid gold, sipped from cups or soaked up with cornbread. Collard greens cost almost nothing when bought in bunches from markets or picked from backyard gardens lasting into December.
Lemon chess bars brought the beloved chess pie into cookie form for African American Christmas gatherings, dense and custardy squares with bright citrus tang. The filling was simple: eggs, sugar, butter, cornmeal, and fresh lemon juice, poured over shortbread crust and baked until just set with crackled golden top. The cornmeal gave these bars their distinctive texture, slightly grainy in a way that felt substantial and homemade. Lemon was considered a luxury ingredient, so these bars appeared only at Christmas when small splurges were permitted. Church ladies brought them to holiday dinners, knowing they'd satisfy those who loved chess pie but preferred something portable. The bars cut cleanly into squares, eaten without plates or forks, making them practical for crowded gatherings. Children loved the sweet tart balance, while adults appreciated how cornmeal kept filling from being cloyingly sweet. These bars have disappeared from modern Christmas spreads, but once represented adapting beloved desserts into forms that traveled well. Spicem and sweet potatoes was one of the rare Christmas dishes enslaved families could call their own, made from animals trapped in December woods. The possum was cleaned, soaked overnight in salted water, then roasted slowly with sweet potatoes tucked around the edges. The meat turned tender and slightly sweet from the animal's diet of persimmons, while the potatoes absorbed rich drippings until caramelized. This dish appeared at Christmas because it was one of the few times enslaved people had permission to hunt without supervision. Sweet potatoes came from small garden plots tended after required labor was finished. Possum hunting became a Christmas Eve tradition, with fathers and sons heading into woods with torches and dogs. The dish represented both the pain of bondage and the resilience of people who created celebration from the margins, turning wild game into a feast that carried memory, hope, and quiet defiance against a system designed to strip away every dignity.
Plain cake was once the crown jewel of African American Christmas celebrations, a towering bourbon-soaked layer cake that originated in Alabama and spread throughout Black Southern communities. The layers were light and tender, made with egg whites, but the filling was where magic happened. Raisins, coconut, and pecans folded into a rich mixture laced with bourbon that soaked into layers over days. Families baked Lane cake weeks before Christmas, wrapping it in cheesecloth and letting it age until flavors melded into something extraordinary. The bourbon preserved the cake while deepening complexity, making each slice taste like celebration. Women competed quietly over whose Lane cake was best, bringing prized creations to church gatherings where knowing eyes judged every bite. The cake represented both skill and generosity, as ingredients were expensive and preparation time-consuming. Its gradual disappearance from Christmas tables leaves a gap that modern cakes cannot fill.
Parched peanut brittle was the Christmas candy requiring nothing but peanuts, sugar, and patience over a hot stove. Peanuts grown in backyard gardens were roasted until fragrant, then folded into caramelized sugar and poured thin onto greased surfaces. The mixture hardened into sheets that shattered into golden shards, delivering satisfying crunch, followed by rich, roasted flavor. Making brittle required careful attention since the sugar could burn in seconds. But experienced cooks knew exactly when to pull the pot from heat. The candy stored well in tins, making it ideal for gift-giving when money was scarce. Parched peanut brittle proved that homegrown ingredients, transformed by skill, could rival any store-bought confection, bringing pride to families with nothing but determination. Pie appeared on Christmas dessert tables as proof that Southern abundance could be captured in a single slice. Pecans gathered from backyard trees or bought cheaply in season were stirred into filling made from corn syrup, eggs, butter, and vanilla. The mixture was poured into unbaked pie shells and baked until the filling set around the nuts that floated to the top. Each slice revealed layers of gooey sweetness beneath a crunchy, caramelized pecan surface that shattered satisfyingly with each forkful. Pecan pie cost little when families harvested their own nuts, the trees providing annual bounty requiring no cultivation or expense. The pie represented Christmas because pecans ripened in fall, their harvest coinciding perfectly with holiday baking season.
Bread were the grown-up indulgence of African-American Christmas cookie tins, no-bake confections carrying warmth of whiskey into every bite. Crushed vanilla wafers were mixed with cocoa, powdered sugar, corn syrup, chopped pecans, and generous bourbon, then rolled into balls and coated in more powdered sugar. The bourbon wasn't cooked out, giving these treats distinctive warmth that adults appreciated and children were warned away from. Families made them weeks before Christmas, allowing them to rest so flavors could marry and mellow. The balls were stored in tins, brought out when adult company arrived for holiday visiting. Some recipes substituted rum for bourbon, creating variations reflecting regional preferences. These confections represented the celebratory spirit of Christmas, a time when small indulgences were permitted. Though bourbon balls remain in some families, many have forgotten this no-bake tradition that required no oven but delivered sophisticated flavor. Sweet chitlins with hot pepper vinegar was a Christmas dish requiring days of preparation and representing the ultimate example of making treasure from what others discarded. Chitlins, cleaned hog intestines, were given to enslaved workers after butchering because white families refused them. The cleaning process was intensive, requiring multiple soakings in cold water. Once cleaned, chitlins boiled for hours until tender, then served with vinegar spiked with hot peppers that cut through the richness. The powerful, distinctive smell filled quarters with an aroma announcing the holiday. Preparing chitlins was communal, with women gathering to clean and cook while sharing stories and songs. The dish carried African roots, connecting enslaved people to food ways their ancestors practiced before the Middle Passage. Eating chitlins at Christmas became an act of cultural preservation, a way of maintaining identity and community bonds that slavery sought to destroy.
Sweet mustard was once the signature drink of African American Christmas gatherings, poured into cups and passed among family members as celebration itself. This silky beverage was made by slowly heating milk, eggs, sugar, and vanilla on the stovetop, stirring constantly until the mixture thickened into smooth, drinkable custard. Families served it warm or chilled with a dusting of nutmeg that filled rooms with holiday fragrance. Unlike store-bought eggnog, Boiled custard carried delicate sweetness that only homemade preparation could achieve. Grandmothers guarded their recipes closely, adjusting sugar and vanilla to suit family preferences passed through generations. Children waited eagerly for their portions, while adults savored richness that signaled Christmas had truly arrived. The drink connected generations, linking present celebrations to holiday memories stretching back through slavery and freedom alike. Today it has largely disappeared from tables, replaced by commercial alternatives that cannot match its warmth or meaning.
Sorghum popcorn balls appeared on Christmas tables throughout Black households where both ingredients grew abundantly and cost almost nothing. Popcorn was popped over wood fires, then drizzled with hot sorghum syrup, boiled to the perfect sticky stage. Buttered hands shaped the mixture into balls while still warm, pressing firmly so kernels held together. The syrup added deep, earthy sweetness that refined sugar could never match, complementing the toasted corn perfectly. Children received these as Christmas gifts, wrapped in waxed paper or tucked into small bags. Sorghum popcorn balls represented the ingenuity of families who grew their own sweetener and corn. The treats lasted for days, carried in pockets and nibbled slowly to make Christmas stretch as far as possible. Sweet potato pie held more emotional weight than any other Christmas dessert, its spiced filling representing generations of tradition. Roasted sweet potatoes were mashed smooth with butter, sugar, eggs, and evaporated milk until silky and fragrant with nutmeg. The mixture was poured into homemade pie crusts and baked until the center barely jiggled, achieving perfect texture. Every family had one designated pie maker whose recipe could not be questioned by younger generations. Sweet potato pie appeared at Christmas because ingredients were affordable and potatoes stored well through winter months. Children learned early the pie was not to be touched until after dinner, though many snuck taste from edges. The dessert proved that simple ingredients created holiday magic.
Tea cakes were the quiet cornerstone of African-American Christmas baking, soft and subtly sweet cookies that carried generations of tradition in every bite. These weren't fancy decorated cookies. They were humble rounds made with molasses, flour, butter, and warm spices like nutmeg and cinnamon that filled kitchens with holiday scent. Grandmothers mixed the dough by feel rather than measurement, knowing exactly when the texture was right from years of practice. The cookies baked until just set, staying soft in the center with edges barely browned. Families served them at church gatherings, packed them in tins for neighbors, and stacked them on plates for Christmas morning. Molasses was affordable when refined sugar wasn't, making these accessible to households stretching every dollar. Children grew up expecting them, associating their earthy sweetness with warmth and celebration. Today, molasses tea cakes have vanished from holiday tables, replaced by elaborate desserts lacking their quiet dignity. Soda and bread was a Christmas treat that transformed hog butchering scraps into something children waited for all year. When slaveholders slaughtered hogs in December, rendered fat left behind crispy bits of skin called cracklings. These golden, crunchy pieces were mixed into cornmeal batter and baked into bread that snapped with each bite. The bread was dense and satisfying, with pockets of salty, porky flavor throughout the golden crumb. Enslaved families considered crackling bread special because cracklings were only available during winter butchering season. Mothers saved the best pieces, hiding them until enough had been collected for a proper batch. The aroma of crackling, bread baking filled small cabins with warmth and anticipation, signaling the holiday had arrived. This simple bread carried enormous emotional weight, a reminder that even within slavery's brutal system, moments of sweetness could be created from scraps others discarded without thought. Molasses.
Roasted possum was once a traditional African-American Christmas dish in rural communities, prepared with sweet potatoes in a manner that transformed humble ingredients into holiday feast. Possums were trapped or hunted in weeks before Christmas, then cleaned and soaked to remove gamminess before roasting. Families who prepared possum took pride in the skill required, knowing proper cleaning, roasting time, and seasoning. The dish represented self-sufficiency and connection to land, using what nature provided rather than what stores sold. Children understood that Christmas abundance came from skill and effort, not just money. The meat was surprisingly tender when prepared correctly. As rural life gave way to urban living and wild game became less accessible, roasted possum disappeared from Christmas tables. Baked
Sugar fudge appeared at Christmas, when white sugar was too expensive, but the holiday still demanded something sweet. Brown sugar was cooked with milk, butter if available, and vanilla until it reached softball stage, then beaten until it thickened into creamy, grainy fudge. The flavor was deeper than white sugar fudge, with caramel notes making each piece taste richer than its humble ingredients suggested. Mothers poured the mixture into buttered pans, scored squares, and hid them until Christmas morning. Brown sugar cost less than refined white, making this fudge possible even in the hardest times. The candy proved that Depression-era cooks could create luxury from pantry staples and patience, turning nothing into something worth celebrating. Candied yams were the crown jewel of every African-American Christmas table, their sticky sweetness drawing children and adults alike. Sweet potatoes were peeled and sliced thick, then layered in baking dishes with brown sugar, butter, cinnamon, and nutmeg. As they baked slowly, the sugars caramelized into golden syrup that coated each tender slice. Some mothers added orange juice or crushed pineapple for brightness, while others kept it simple. The dish cost almost nothing since sweet potatoes grew abundantly and stored well through winter. Children would sneak bites before dinner, unable to resist the glistening orange slices that smelled like Christmas itself. Candied yams represented both abundance and thrift, proving holiday luxury needed no expensive ingredients. Chitlins,
Sorghum gingerbread cookies carried the deep amber sweetness of southern sorghum syrup into every Christmas celebration in African American homes. Unlike commercial ginger snaps, these cookies offered a rounded, almost caramel-like flavor from sorghum's unique character, earthy, slightly tangy, and rich with minerals. The dough was rolled thick and cut into shapes using drinking glasses or hand-carved wooden forms. Baked in cast iron, the cookies emerged with soft, chewy centers and edges that crisped just enough to hold their shape. The spice blend varied by household. Some added black pepper for warmth, others preferred heavy doses of ground ginger. Sorghum was cheaper than molasses in many rural areas, making these practical for families with limited means. Children helped cut shapes at the kitchen table, learning patterns that connected them to elders. These cookies represented edible heritage, proof that simple ingredients created something worth remembering. Sweet potatoes were the simplest Christmas preparation. Whole potatoes buried in fireplace ashes and left to cook slowly until their skins charred and their flesh turned to orange silk. No recipe was needed, no special ingredients required, just potatoes and fire and time. The ash-baked potatoes developed a smokiness that oven-baked versions could never match, their sugars caramelizing against the charred skin into a flavor that tasted like the earth itself transformed. Children would watch the fire, waiting for the moment when potatoes were deemed ready, then juggle the hot tubers from hand to hand while the skin was peeled away.
Vinegar taffy was the Depression candy, proving sweetness could be stretched from the most basic pantry staples imaginable. Sugar and vinegar were boiled together until the mixture reached hard crack stage, creating candy both sweet and tangy. The hot syrup was poured onto greased surfaces, cooled slightly, then pulled repeatedly until it turned opaque and chewy. The vinegar prevented crystallization and added bright, sharp flavor, cutting through the sweetness perfectly. Children loved pulling the taffy, competing to see who could stretch it longest without breaking. The finished candy was twisted into ropes and cut into pieces lasting weeks in jars. Vinegar taffy cost almost nothing, requiring only 2 ingredients most families already had. Pudding appeared at Christmas gatherings in enormous bowls, its layers of vanilla wafers, custard, and sliced bananas disappearing faster than any other dessert. Homemade vanilla custard was cooked on the stovetop until thick, then layered while warm over cookies and fresh banana slices. Meringue or whipped cream crowned the top, toasted golden if meringue was used. The pudding needed time to set, allowing wafers to soften into cake-like layers that melted on the tongue. Bananas were affordable year-round, making this dessert possible even when budgets were tight. Children hovered near the bowl, begging for early taste that mothers pretended not to allow. Banana pudding carried pure comfort, its creamy sweetness representing everything good about holiday gatherings. Red punch
Raisin balls were the no-bake indulgences that adults anticipated at African American Christmas gatherings, carrying the warmth of aged rum into every bite. Crushed cookies or graham crackers were mixed with powdered sugar, chopped nuts, and raisins that had been soaked in rum until plump. The mixture was rolled into balls and coated in more powdered sugar or cocoa. Like bourbon balls, these weren't for children. The rum flavor was distinct and unapologetic. Families made them weeks before Christmas, allowing flavors to marry and mellow in tins stored in cool places. The rum-soaked raisins provided bursts of boozy sweetness that made these feel sophisticated and celebratory. Some recipes used dark rum for deeper flavor, others preferred lighter varieties. These confections represented the adult pleasures of holiday gatherings, treats that signaled grown-up celebration. The tradition has faded from many families who once considered them essential. Fried pork skins were a Christmas treat made from the skin of butchered hogs, cut into strips and fried in their own rendered fat until puffed and crispy. The skins started tough and rubbery, but heat transformed them into light, crunchy bites that shattered between teeth. Salt was the only seasoning needed, though some families added a sprinkle of pepper when available. Children gathered around the frying pot, eager to snatch the first pieces as they emerged golden and bubbling from the lard. The skins provided both protein and fat, essential nutrients during cold months when bodies needed extra fuel. At Christmas, there might be more skins available from the holiday butchering, turning what was usually a small treat into something approaching abundance. The crackling sound of frying skins announced the season as clearly as any carol. This dish represented the waste-nothing philosophy that enslaved communities developed. Every piece of the hog had value when survival depended on stretching resources to their absolute limits.
Honey taffy was the Christmas candy made possible when families kept bees or knew neighbors who did, turning liquid gold into chewy sweetness. Honey was boiled with a little sugar and vinegar until it reached hard crack stage, then poured onto greased surfaces to cool. The pulling transformed the candy from sticky mass into satiny ropes that lightened in color with each stretch. Honey's floral sweetness gave the taffy distinctive flavor that plain sugar versions could never match. Children competed to pull the longest strands before the candy stiffened too much for shaping. The finished taffy was cut into pieces and wrapped in wax paper for storage. Honey taffy represented the intersection of beekeeping tradition and candy-making skill passed through generations. Rice pudding.
Cornbread dressing made from scratch became holiday tradition that stretched expensive turkey into meals feeding extended families gathering from across cities and states for celebration. Day-old cornbread was crumbled and mixed with sautéed onions, celery, sage, chicken broth, and eggs, then baked until golden on top and creamy inside with perfect texture. This wasn't stuffing cooked inside the bird, but southern dressing baked separately in pans, allowing better control over texture and flavor throughout. The cornbread absorbed the broth and seasonings, becoming savory and moist with crispy edges that everyone fought over at dinner tables. Families made huge pans because this was as important as the turkey itself, sometimes more important given its cultural significance to gatherings. In the 1970s, cornmeal was cheap enough that making cornbread for dressing didn't stress budgets even during expensive holiday meals celebrated properly. Each family had their own variations, with recipes guarded and passed down through generations of women who took pride in their dressing. Yeast rolls brushed with butter were the soft, cloud-like bread children could never stop reaching for during Christmas dinner. Mothers kneaded the dough patiently, letting it rise under warm towels until it doubled in size, checking it gently with fingers that knew the exact feel of readiness. When the rolls baked, they puffed into golden pillows that glistened as melted butter brushed across their tops, filling the air with warmth. They were perfect for sopping up gravy pairing with ham or eating warm and plain straight from the pan while steam curled upward. Children always tried to sneak one before dinner even began, unable to resist. Yeast rolls tasted like softness, warmth, and the kind of love that came from hands that cooked all day to make Christmas feel whole. Sweet potato.
Dried apple stack cake appeared at Christmas gatherings when families had managed to dry and preserve apples from fall harvests. The cake consisted of thin layers of molasses, sweetened dough, stacked high with spiced dried apple, filling between each layer. Making it required planning months ahead, drying apple slices in late summer, storing them carefully through autumn, then reconstituting them with water and spices when December arrived. Each layer was baked separately, requiring patience and careful fire management. The assembled cake needed to rest for days, allowing moisture from the apple filling to soften the dense layers into something tender and unified. Families who brought stacked cakes to Christmas gatherings earned respect for their foresight and skill. The cake represented the long view enslaved people took toward survival, understanding that today's labor could become tomorrow's celebration if done with care and intention. Each slice contained months of planning and hope. Okra soup.
Red Hill pudding was the ultimate expression of Depression thrift, transforming dried bread ends into Christmas dessert no one would guess came from scraps. Bread hills saved throughout the week were soaked in milk until soft, then mixed with eggs, sugar, vanilla, and spices. The mixture baked into custardy pudding with crispy top and creamy interior that satisfied like something expensive. Raisins or dried fruit stretched the dessert further when supplies allowed. Bread Hill pudding cost almost nothing, since the main ingredient was kitchen waste destined for chickens. Mothers made this knowing families would never suspect they were eating scraps transformed into something wonderful. The pudding proved that nothing needed wasting when creativity met necessity. Buttered velvet cake stood tall on Christmas dessert tables, its dramatic crimson layers representing celebration and culinary achievement. Cocoa powder and vinegar created distinctive flavor, while red food coloring transformed ordinary batter into something spectacular. The cake baked into tender, velvety crumb that sliced clean against stark white cream cheese frosting. Mothers prepared red velvet days before Christmas, allowing flavors to meld and frosting to set. The cake impressed guests who assumed its beauty required professional skill, not realizing how simple the recipe was. Red velvet became associated with Christmas because its colors matched the holiday perfectly. The ingredients cost little more than ordinary cake, yet results look like something from a fancy bakery.
Smoothies brought the beloved New Orleans confection into portable form for African American Christmas celebrations across the Gulf South. Buttery dough was enriched with brown sugar and studded with chopped pecans, then baked until edges caramelized into something approaching candy. The flavor was distinctly Southern, rich with molasses undertones from brown sugar and the earthy sweetness of toasted pecans. These weren't delicate cookies, but substantial rounds meant to satisfy serious sweet cravings with one or two pieces. Families with pecan trees made them as celebrations of their own harvest, children helping crack and sort nuts in the weeks before Christmas. The cookies kept well in tins, their flavors deepening as they rested. Some versions were topped with a brown sugar glaze that set into a crackled praline coating. Though praline candies remain popular, these cookie adaptations have largely vanished from holiday traditions that once celebrated regional flavors. Spice-dried sweet potato biscuits were a Christmas treat, stretching precious wheat flour by combining it with mashed sweet potatoes from garden plots. Regular biscuits required flour slaveholders, rarely distributed generously, but sweet potatoes could bulk up dough while adding sweetness and moisture. Potatoes were roasted until soft, mashed smooth, then worked into flour with a bit of lard until soft dough formed. Baked near fire or in Dutch ovens, biscuits came out golden and tender with an orange tint. They were slightly sweet even without molasses, making them feel special compared to everyday cornbread. At Christmas, mothers might save flour for weeks, hiding it from children who would have eaten it as paste. The biscuits represented ingenuity, knowledge that ingredients could be combined into something greater than their parts. Each bite contained the care and planning of enslaved women determined to give their families something beautiful.
Lemon drops were hard candies that puckered mouths and brightened winter days with bursts of citrus sunshine. Sugar cooked to hard crack stage received lemon oil and citric acid. The mixture poured quickly into molds or dropped onto greased slabs before hardening. The finished drops were intensely sour-sweet, each one lasting several minutes as it slowly dissolved on the tongue. Black grandmothers made lemon drops for Christmas because lemons appeared in holiday stockings and the candy preserved their brightness through dark winter months. The drops were kept in glass jars, their yellow color glowing like captured sunlight on kitchen shelves. Children reached for them when coughs threatened, the citric acid soothing scratchy throats while sugar provided comfort. Lemon drops required precision. Too hot and the sugar burned, too cool and it wouldn't set. But the results justified the attention required.
Horehound drops were the old-fashioned Christmas candy connecting Black families to herbal traditions stretching back generations. The bitter herb grew wild throughout the South, gathered freely from roadsides by those who knew where to look. Horehound leaves were steeped into strong tea, combined with sugar, and boiled into hard candy that soothed sore throats while satisfying sweet cravings. The flavor was intensely herbal with bitter undertones balanced by sweetness, an acquired taste children learned to love. Mothers made these as medicine and treat combined, giving them throughout cold winter months. The drops cost nothing but labor since the herb grew wild, and sugar could be bartered cheaply. Horehound drops represented folk knowledge passed through generations.
Nut pinwheels were the impressive swirl cookies that showcased skill and patience at African American Christmas gatherings. A buttery dough was rolled flat, spread with filling of chopped dates and walnuts cooked to thick paste, then rolled into a log and chilled until firm. Sliced thin, each cookie revealed a beautiful spiral of dark filling against pale dough that looked far more complicated than it was. The date filling was naturally sweet, needing little added sugar, while walnuts provided richness and crunch. Making these cookies was often a 2-day project, dough and filling one day, rolling and slicing the next, which made them feel special. Church ladies competed quietly over whose pinwheels had the tightest spirals and most even slices. Children watched slicing with fascination, seeing the hidden pattern revealed with each cut. These cookies demonstrated that patience and technique could transform simple ingredients into something visually stunning. Oatmeal cakes with sorghum appeared on Christmas morning tables, the simple cornmeal cakes elevated by drizzles of thick, dark syrup. The cakes were made from cornmeal, mixed with water or buttermilk when available, shaped into rounds, and fried in lard until golden on both sides. Sorghum syrup came from cane-like plants that some enslaved people were permitted to grow and process, the stalks crushed and the juice boiled down into amber sweetness. The combination was filling and sweet, providing energy for cold December days. Children loved the sticky sweetness, licking syrup from fingers and plates. The cakes required no special skill. Any child old enough to tend a fire could make them, yet they carried celebration in every bite. This dish represented how enslaved families created holiday spirit from the most basic ingredients, transforming cornmeal and syrup into something worth anticipating all year.
With a Christmas cookie that filled tins throughout Black households, their spicy crunch lasting for weeks when stored properly. Molasses, ginger, cinnamon, and cloves combined into dough that was rolled thin and cut into rounds before baking until crisp. The cookies snapped cleanly when broken, releasing fragrance that announced Christmas as surely as any carol. Molasses cost far less than refined sugar, while providing deeper flavor that complemented the warm spices perfectly. Children helped cut shapes while mothers monitored ovens, making cookie production a family event. The snaps were packed into tins for gift giving or saved for dunking into coffee throughout the holiday. Ginger snaps proved that the simplest cookies often created the strongest memories. Chessman John appeared on Christmas tables as both celebration and superstition. Its black-eyed peas promising prosperity in the coming year. Rice and peas were cooked together with smoky ham hock or bacon, the starches absorbing meat drippings until every bite carried depth. Onions and garlic added aromatic foundation, while cayenne provided warming heat. The dish connected families to Gullah Geechee traditions stretching back centuries, carrying cultural significance beyond its simple ingredients. Mothers started cooking on Christmas Eve, letting it rest overnight so flavors could deepen. The dish cost pennies since dried peas and rice were pantry staples, storing indefinitely. Eating Hoppin' John at Christmas ensured good luck, a tradition families never skipped.
Coconut macaroons were the chewy, golden brown treasures that appeared on African American Christmas plates, simple mounds of sweetened coconut bound with egg whites and vanilla. The preparation required only mixing shredded coconut with sugar and egg whites, then dropping spoonfuls onto baking sheets. They emerged from the oven with crisp exteriors that gave way to soft, chewy centers, still moist with coconut milk. Some versions were dipped in chocolate after cooling, adding richness that made them feel more elaborate than their simple origins. Church ladies made them by the dozens for Christmas bazaars, knowing they'd sell out quickly to those who craved their tropical sweetness. The macaroons kept well in tins, actually improving as they rested and flavors melded together. Children loved their chewiness and the way coconut strands stuck between their teeth. These cookies proved that holiday baking didn't require complicated techniques, just quality ingredients and attention to timing. Bourbon balls, collard greens with ham hocks appeared on Christmas tables as one of the most anticipated dishes of the year, simmered for hours until tough leaves turned silky. Collards grew well in southern winters, their broad leaves sweetening after frost. Enslaved cooks stripped leaves from thick stems, washed them multiple times, then packed them into iron pots with whatever ham hock the slaveholder provided. The greens cooked down dramatically, a bushel reducing to few servings as leaves absorbed smoky pork flavor and released mineral-rich liquor. At Christmas, there might be more meat on the bone than usual, making the dish feel almost luxurious. Families passed down specific techniques, when to add vinegar, how much pepper. The greens were eaten with cornbread for soaking up precious potlikker, ensuring nothing was wasted. This dish represented nourishment, tradition, and small mercies that made survival possible.
Tell us which tradition you'd bring back, like this video if the memories made you hungry, and subscribe to keep these rich flavors alive. Pork cracklin cornbread was a dish that made even a simple pan of bread feel like a celebration. Cracklins, small crispy bits left from rendering pork fat, were cheap to come by and packed with flavor. My grandmother folded them into cornbread batter, the fat melting and the crunchy pieces scattering through every slice. Baked until golden, it came out hearty and rich, with texture that plain cornbread never had. The salty pork balanced the sweet cornmeal, making each bite feel indulgent even though the ingredients were inexpensive. Families sliced it thick and ate it alone or alongside beans, greens, or stews, letting the cracklins carry the flavor of meat through the whole meal. In the 1960s, this kind of dish made families feel proud, as though they had something special on the table despite the hardships around them. Pork cracklin cornbread was thrift turned into joy, simple food lifted by the spirit of making do.
Ham with pineapple was the showpiece protein that anchored many African-American Christmas dinners, its glazed surface glistening under dining room lights. A whole ham was scored in diamond patterns, studded with cloves, then covered with pineapple rings and maraschino cherries before baking. Brown sugar and pineapple juice created a glaze that caramelized into sticky sweetness during the final hour of cooking. The ham fed crowds for days, appearing at Christmas dinner, then reincarnating as sandwiches, ham salad, and flavoring for beans throughout the week. Buying a whole ham cost less per pound than other cuts, making it economical despite its impressive appearance. The ham represented abundance and celebration, its sweet and savory flavors defining Christmas for generations of families.
Pickled thumbprint cookies were small but meaningful additions to African-American Christmas plates, shortbread rounds pressed with thumbs and filled with homemade preserves. The dough was simple and buttery, shaped into balls and indented before baking so jam would pool in the center. The preserves were often made from summer fruits, blackberry, peach, fig, or plum, that families had canned for these moments. This connected Christmas baking to the entire year's labor, from picking berries in July to filling cookie plates in December. The jewel-toned centers made these cookies beautiful, colors brightening tins filled with brown and golden offerings. Grandmothers taught children to press small thumbs into dough, making the process interactive and memorable. Each batch told stories of which fruits had been preserved that year. The cookies balanced buttery richness with fruit's sweet tart brightness, creating complexity from humble components. Commercial versions lack connection to gardens and the specific hands that preserved each jar. Black stew appeared on Christmas tables when enslaved men managed to trap rabbits in woods surrounding the plantation during scarce personal hours. Rabbits were skinned quickly, cut into pieces, and simmered with wild onions and root vegetables, saved from fall gardens until meat fell from bone. The stew was thin by necessity, never enough fat to make it rich, but hot and filling, warming bellies on the coldest nights. Rabbit hunting required skill passed from fathers to sons, knowledge of where rabbits ran and how to set snares without detection. The meat was lean and mild, absorbing whatever flavors the cook added while providing precious protein regular rations lacked. Families gathered around the single pot, each person receiving a share ladled into whatever vessel they own. The stew represented self-reliance and small freedoms enslaved people carved within the brutal system, the ability to provide something extra through their own labor and knowledge.
Cornmeal shortbread was the humble cookie that stretched precious wheat flour by substituting corn, creating something uniquely Southern and delicious. Butter or lard was creamed with sugar, then mixed with cornmeal and just enough wheat flour to hold the dough together. The cookies were pressed into pans or shaped by hand, then baked until edges turned golden while centers stayed tender. The texture was crumbly and slightly gritty, with corn's natural sweetness enhancing buttery richness. Cornmeal cost far less than wheat flour, making these cookies affordable when budgets demanded creativity. Mothers baked large batches for Christmas, storing them in tins where they kept for weeks. Cornmeal shortbread proved that substitution born from necessity could create something worth making by choice. Black's the dessert that anchored every African-American Christmas dessert table, its dense, buttery slices satisfying without overwhelming. The classic recipe called for a pound each of butter, sugar, eggs, and flour, creamed together until smooth and baked until golden. Some mothers added vanilla or almond extract, while others kept it pure to let the butter flavor shine through. The cake sliced cleanly and kept well for days, improving as it aged on the counter under a glass dome. Pound cake appeared at Christmas because it could be made ahead and served to unexpected guests without any additional preparation needed. Children ate it plain, while adults paired it with fruit or whipped cream for something fancier. The cake represented tradition passed down through generations of holiday baking.
Banana pecan crescents were the elegant, melt-in-your-mouth cookies that graced African-American Christmas plates with their refined simplicity. The dough was rich with butter and ground pecans, shaped into small crescents before baking and rolled in powdered sugar while still warm. Each cookie dissolved on the tongue, releasing waves of toasted pecan flavor and buttery richness that seemed almost too delicate for everyday consumption. These were company cookies, made when presentation mattered as much as taste. Families often gathered pecans from their own trees, grinding them fine for the special purpose. The crescents were arranged carefully on plates, their snowy coating and graceful shapes suggesting elegance despite humble origins. Children learned to handle them gently, understanding that some cookies require more care than others. Though variations exist today, homemade crescents carrying the taste of specific trees and kitchens have largely disappeared. Greens with salt pork was a winter dish, making use of hearty vegetables still available when most gardens had gone dormant. Turnips grew well into cold weather, their leafy tops remaining edible even after frost. Enslaved cooks would harvest the greens, wash them thoroughly, and simmer them for hours with whatever salt pork was available, often just a small piece stretched to flavor a large pot. The greens cooked down into a tender, slightly bitter mass infused with smoky pork essence. The cooking liquid was saved and drunk or sopped up with cornbread, extending the meal's nutrition further. At Christmas, the dish might include both the turnip roots and their greens, the white flesh of the turnip adding substance to the pot. Families grew turnips in their small garden plots because they were reliable and required little attention. This dish represented the knowledge of seasonal cooking that enslaved communities developed, understanding which foods remained available through winter and how to make them sustaining.
Fruit and nut balls required no cooking at all. The mixture of dried fruits and nuts bound together by their own natural stickiness into dense confections. Dates, raisins, figs, and whatever nuts were available were ground together until they formed a paste, then rolled into balls and coated in shredded coconut or powdered sugar. The candy was dense and chewy, each bite delivering concentrated fruit sweetness alongside nutty richness. Black families made fruit and nut balls for Christmas because ingredients kept well and the recipe demanded no precise temperatures or timing. Children helped by rolling the mixture in their small hands, learning candy making through this forgiving process. The balls appeared on holiday platters as the healthy option among richer confections, though they satisfied cravings as effectively as any fudge. This no-cook candy brought homemade treats within reach of anyone willing to chop and roll.
Corn was the side dish that reminded families of summer gardens, even in the middle of December holiday celebrations. Corn kernels cut from frozen or canned cobs were fried in bacon drippings with onions until the natural sugars caramelized and edges turned golden brown. The corn was seasoned with salt, pepper, and sometimes a pinch of sugar to enhance its natural sweetness further. Some mothers added cream near the end, creating a richer dish that bordered on creamed corn but retained more satisfying texture. Fried corn cost almost nothing when made from canned corn bought in bulk or frozen corn put up from summer harvests. The dish provided bright sweetness that balanced the heavier meats and gravies on Christmas plates.
Which soul food Christmas dish will you bring back this holiday season? Share your family's traditions in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe so you never miss another celebration of the foods that brought us together.